I've already made a follow-up to my Dropout Nation video, but I figured I should upload this video first because Thanksgiving is coming up in the United States, and if you're not from the United States, then this probably means absolutely nothing to you. However, I was in a cab today, and I was in a conversation with the cab driver about Black Friday, the infamous American holiday when American consumers go apeshit and buy a bunch of cheap crap that's on sale and trample over each other to save a couple dollars on some third-rate DVD player. Or it's Blu-ray player now, okay, whatever. You get my point. And we were talking about the absurdity of Black Friday, and the cab driver says, well, some things, things never change, or something to that effect. And what it made me think was, the absurdity, I guess, part of the absurdity that goes unstated about American holidays is that far from things not changing, things were not always this way. So Christmas, for example, which is, what's behind Black Friday, that was, you go back a few hundred years, it was pretty much a drinking holiday in Europe, and it was much more public, and Christmas, even going back, say, 100 years in America, was a completely different sort of holiday, and it gained this new presence and consumer angle to it only in relatively recent history. And I'm pretty sure there's a History Channel documentary on the history of Christmas that explores some of this. Thanksgiving is another example. I don't believe we're told about the Pilgrims, and it's something to do with the Pilgrims and having Thanksgiving with the natives, and it turns out none of that is quite the way that it's presented to you in grade school. But that did not become a national holiday until, I think, the 30s or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was under Roosevelt which Thanksgiving became a national holiday, and then we create these traditions around it, and people, they're old enough where people of my generation, maybe even my parents, or maybe even my grandparents' generation, these sort of are quote-unquote traditional ways of viewing things like Thanksgiving and Christmas seem normalized, but they haven't always been this way. So far from things never changing, it's only in relatively recent history that we've arrived at the way things are now, and we seem to just have this generational memory loss, where we can't remember or we can't understand that things actually were different in the past. And no, it has in fact not always been this way. But at the same time, we are presented with stories like the Pilgrims on Thanksgiving in a very one-dimensional, cartoonish sort of way. And of course, the Pilgrims were religious fanatics. I don't think they really, as far as I understand, Thanksgiving was not a widespread tradition in America before it became a national holiday. So at any rate, we obscure the actual origins of these. Like Columbus Day, I think, is just a holiday we should get rid of entirely, or name it something else altogether, given what Christopher Columbus actually did. So I know I mentioned in another video, which I haven't released yet, so the People's History of the United States, which I've already mentioned in another video you haven't seen yet, it talks about Christopher Columbus's discovery of America, and this is a person who murdered and enslaved people, along with the Spanish that were with him, and they wanted to find gold on the island, and so they enslaved the Indians and murdered, raped, tortured a lot of them. And there was one particular scene, I'm pretty sure it's in People's History, where they're putting to death an Arawak Indian. I don't remember the exact reason, and the Spanish, in their infinite benevolence, offer him one last chance to convert to Christianity. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, "I met enough Christians in this world, I don't want to meet any in the next." So the truth behind much of our history and behind many of these holidays is not quite as pleasant and one-dimensional as we're constantly presented in our schools, but through, I guess, cultural propaganda and, Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving and all these other sorts of stuff, we're kind of misled about a lot of the realities that went into these sorts of things. And people don't want quote-unquote tradition attacked, but our so-called traditions not only have evolved, but aren't in the scheme of things that old, and it's very strange to hear people kind of act as if these are institutions as old as time, or things never change, it's always been this way, when that's not exactly true. And so yeah, I will be eating turkey like every other American, or nearly every other American, most Americans, whatever, tomorrow. But I also recognize that the Pilgrims are, I wouldn't put the story of the Pilgrims as some heroic, they're escaping religious freedom because the rest of Europe found them insufferable religious fanatics and kicked them out. And they're not as big a part of American history as we think. They're not the first people to colonize America, and most people did not come to this continent for religious freedom. They did it to make money, and what happened to the natives as a result of that is quite grotesque. And all of this is just sort of like, the Pilgrims in America, the story of America, and Christopher Columbus discovered the New World, as if there weren't tens or hundreds of thousands of people already in the New World. Yeah. So basically, I think that we can simultaneously be honest about our own history and still enjoy the day off and turkey and that sort of thing. But I think that we would be better off as a society if we actually recognized what really happened way back when, rather than presenting this sort of one-dimensional Disney version of the Pilgrims or Christopher Columbus, or conflating, turning Christmas into this shopping spree. No, it's actually about the birth of a magic baby with a bunch of symbolism and decorations taken from the pagans. And the date is taken from the pagans as well. It's a thinly disguised winter solstice holiday merged with a magic baby holiday. I mean, it's the reality of Christmas. So, yeah, rant over. Have a nice Thanksgiving if you're American. And if you're not, eat some cranberry sauce.